The emergency broadcast tone pierced through my earpiece at exactly 3:47 a.m., jolting me from the half-sleep that passed for rest during night shifts in the Vatican necropolis. I'd been working as a tomb guardian for 8 years, and in all that time, I'd never heard that particular alarm sequence. "All units, this is command," came Father Castellano's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. "We have a code black situation in the Cardinal crypts. Repeat, code black. All tomb guardians report to Emergency Station Alpha immediately." I was already moving, my flashlight cutting through the ancient corridors as I made my way through the labyrinthine passages beneath St. Peter's Basilica. Code black meant only one thing: unauthorized movement in the restricted burial areas. In 8 years, we'd never had a code black. My name is Giuseppe Toretti, and I guard the dead. Not the kind of work you put on a resume, but it pays well, and the Vatican provides excellent benefits. Most people don't know that beneath the tourist areas, beneath even the papal apartments, lies a vast network of catacombs and burial chambers stretching back nearly 2,000 years. Cardinals, bishops, even a few saints rest in these sacred halls, and my job is to ensure they stay resting. The emergency station was chaos when I arrived. 12 other tomb guardians clustered around Father Castellano, all of us still in our black uniforms, faces pale in the fluorescent lighting. Castellano looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying the weight of someone about to deliver impossible news. "At 3:30 a.m., our motion sensors detected activity in Cardinal Crypt Section 7. Multiple contacts, moving in coordinated patterns." Marco Benedetti, our senior guardian, spoke up. "Father, the sensors malfunction sometimes. Rats settling foundations." "I thought the same thing," Castellano interrupted, "until I reviewed the security footage." He turned a laptop toward us, and what I saw on the screen made my blood freeze. The grainy black and white feed showed the interior of Cardinal Crypt 7, rows of ornate marble tombs stretching into darkness. But 3 of the tombs were open, their heavy stone lids pushed aside, and figures in red robes were moving between them with slow, deliberate steps. "Mother of God," whispered Adriano Rossi, crossing himself. The walking figures matched the burial records for Cardinals Torriani, Salvati, and Benedetti. Castellano continued. "All died between 1978 and 1983. All buried with full ceremonial honors. All confirmed to be in their crypts as of last week's routine inspection." I stared at the screen, watching the red-robed figures move with an unnatural grace through the burial chamber. Their movements were coordinated, purposeful, as if they were searching for something. "What do they want?" asked Marco. "We don't know," Castellano replied, "but we have protocols for this situation. The Church has dealt with similar incidents before, though not for over a century." He handed each of us a sealed envelope marked with the papal seal. "These contain your emergency instructions. Do not open them unless I give the direct order. For now, we implement Containment Protocol 7. I'd heard whispers of Protocol 7 during training, but never the details. The Vatican kept certain procedures classified at the highest levels, shared only when absolutely necessary. "The catacombs are now under complete lockdown," Castellano announced. "No one enters or leaves without my direct authorization. We patrol in teams of 3, maintaining visual contact at all times. Under no circumstances do you approach the Cardinal crypts alone." He paused, meeting each of our eyes in turn. "And gentlemen, if you encounter any of the walking cardinals, you follow the ancient protocols exactly. Your lives may depend on it." The ancient protocols. I'd read about them in the restricted archives, guidelines written by medieval church scholars for dealing with the restless dead. I'd always assumed they were historical curiosities, relics of superstitious times. Now, as I watched those red figures moving through the crypt on the security monitor, they seemed terrifyingly relevant. My patrol assignment paired me with Marco and a newer guardian named Luca Moretti. We were responsible for the outer perimeter, ensuring nothing escaped the cardinal crypts into the general catacomb system. Our route took us through 12 miles of underground passages, past burial chambers containing thousands of church officials spanning nearly 2 millennia. "I can't believe this is happening," Luca muttered as we walked the ancient stone corridors. "Dead people don't just get up and walk around." "The church has seen stranger things," Marco replied, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "I've worked here 23 years. You learn not to question certain phenomena." Our radios crackled with regular check-ins from the other patrol teams. Everything seemed normal in the outer sectors, but the tension was palpable. Every shadow looked suspicious, every sound potentially threatening. At 5:20 a.m., our routine changed forever. "Team 7, this is command." Castellano's voice carried new urgency. "We have additional movement in Cardinal Crypt sections 4 and 6. The situation is expanding." "How many more?" Marco asked into his radio. 6 additional figures confirmed. Cardinals Martelli, Giovanetti, Cerasi, Farnese, Braschi, and Altieri, all deceased between 1965 and 1988. 9 walking cardinals. 9 men who had served the church faithfully in life, now moving through their burial chambers for unknown purposes. "Command, this is Team 7, Marco reported, requesting permission to advance closer to the cardinal crypts for visual confirmation. "Negative. Maintain current perimeter. Do not approach within 50 meters of any cardinal crypt entrance." But fate had other plans. As we rounded a corner near the intersection of the old medieval tunnels and the Renaissance-era burial chambers, we saw him. Cardinal Torriani stood in the corridor ahead of us, his red robes immaculate despite having been buried for over 40 years. He faced away from us, studying an inscription on the wall with the same scholarly attention he'd been known for in life. The 3 of us froze. This was the moment our training had prepared us for, but seeing it in reality was completely different from any simulation or theoretical discussion. Cardinal Torriani turned slowly toward us, and I got my first clear look at his face. He appeared exactly as he had in life, if perhaps a bit paler. His eyes were clear and intelligent, showing no signs of decay or corruption. When he spoke, his voice carried the same authoritative tone that had commanded respect in Vatican meetings decades ago. "Guardians," he said with a slight nod, "you patrol faithfully. The church is well served." Marco stepped forward slightly, remembering the protocols. "Your Eminence, we are honored by your presence. How may we serve?" "We seek the sealed archive," Cardinal Torriani replied. "The location has been forgotten in our absence. Perhaps you could provide guidance?" The sealed archive. I'd heard rumors of such a place but never confirmed details. Supposedly a vault containing the church's most sensitive historical documents, sealed by papal decree and hidden somewhere in the vast catacomb system. "Your Eminence," Marco said carefully, "I am not authorized to discuss the location of restricted archives. Perhaps Father Castellano could assist you." Cardinal Torriani tilted his head slightly, considering this response. "Father Castellano, yes, he would have the necessary clearances. We shall speak with him." Without another word, the cardinal turned and began walking toward the central command area. His footsteps echoed strangely in the stone corridors, too heavy for someone who should have no physical substance. "Command, this is Team 7, Marco whispered into his radio. "Cardinal Torriani is heading your way. He's looking for the sealed archive." "Understood. All teams, maintain your positions. Do not follow or attempt to redirect any of the cardinals." As we watched the red-robed figure disappear around a corner, Luca finally spoke. He seemed normal, like he was just taking a walk. "That's what makes it terrifying," I replied. "Whatever force brought them back, it preserved their personalities, their intelligence, everything. They're not mindless undead. They're exactly who they were in life." The implications were staggering. 9 of the church's former leaders, each with access to decades of Vatican secrets and political knowledge, were now walking the catacombs with apparent freedom. What knowledge did they possess? What were they really seeking? Our radio crackled again. "All teams, this is command. Return to emergency station Alpha immediately. We have a development." The development was Cardinal Torriani, standing in our command center, engaged in what appeared to be a perfectly normal conversation with Father Castellano. The other guardians stood around the perimeter, unsure how to react to the surreal scene. "Ah, Giuseppe," Castellano called out as we entered. "Cardinal Torriani has been explaining their situation. It seems they have urgent business to attend to." "Indeed," the cardinal said, turning to address all of us. "The church faces a crisis that requires immediate action. Documents in the sealed archive contain information vital to resolving this threat." "What kind of crisis, Your Eminence?" asked Marco. Cardinal Torriani's expression grew grave. 3 days ago, the barriers between worlds grew thin. Forces that the church has spent centuries containing are stirring. The other cardinals and I have been summoned to deal with this emergency." "Summoned by whom?" Castellano asked. "By the church itself," the cardinal replied. "We are bound to serve, in life and beyond. When the need is great enough, that service continues." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. I could see my breath in the suddenly frigid air, and the fluorescent lights flickered ominously. "Your Eminence," Castellano said slowly, "what exactly is contained in the sealed archive?" "Binding rituals," Cardinal Torriani replied matter-of-factly. "Containment protocols. Instructions for dealing with entities that predate Christianity but respect its authority. The Church has always been more than a religious institution, Father. It has been humanity's shield against forces that would unmake reality itself." A new voice cut through our stunned silence. The archive was sealed for good reason. We turned to see Cardinal Salvati entering the command center, his red robes rustling softly. Behind him came Cardinal Benedetti, both moving with the same unnatural grace. "Salvati speaks truth," Cardinal Benedetti added. "The knowledge in the archive is dangerous, but the crisis we face is more dangerous still." "What crisis?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. Cardinal Salvati fixed me with a stare that seemed to look right through me. "Tell me, Guardian Toretti, have you noticed anything unusual in the city above? Strange dreams, perhaps? Electronic devices malfunctioning? Animals behaving oddly?" Now that he mentioned it, there had been reports. Rome's emergency services had logged dozens of calls about power outages, pet dogs refusing to go outside, and citizens complaining of nightmares so vivid they seemed real. "The boundaries are weakening," Cardinal Torriani explained. "Soon, things that should remain hidden will begin manifesting in the physical world. The Church has protocols for such events, but they require access to specific texts and rituals." Father Castellano looked overwhelmed. "Your Eminences, I don't have the authority to unseal Vatican archives. That requires papal approval." "The Pope is in prayer," Cardinal Benedetti said. "He has been for 3 days, maintaining spiritual barriers while we handle the practical matters. Time is running short." The lights flickered again, and somewhere in the distance, we heard a sound like thunder, though we were deep underground and the weather had been clear. "That was not thunder," Cardinal Salvati observed grimly. "The first breach has occurred. We must reach the archive immediately." Castellano made a decision that would change everything. "Giuseppe, Marco, escort their Eminences to sub-level 7. Emergency authorization Omega 77. I'll contact the Vatican Secretary of State for retroactive approval." Sub-level 7. I'd been working in the catacombs for 8 years and had never been granted access to anything below level 5. The deeper levels were restricted to only the highest-ranking church officials. The journey to sub-level 7 took us through passages I'd never seen before. The architecture grew progressively older as we descended, Roman stonework giving way to pre-Christian foundations, and finally to chambers that seemed carved from living rock by unknown hands. These tunnels predate the Vatican by millennia, Cardinal Torriani explained as we walked. The church was built here deliberately to maintain control over sites of ancient power. The walls around us were covered with inscriptions in languages I couldn't identify, symbols that seemed to shift and move in the light of our flashlights. The air grew thicker with each level we descended, taking on an almost physical presence that made breathing difficult. "Your Eminences," Marco asked, "how many other incidents like this have there been?" "More than you might expect," Cardinal Benedetti replied. "The Church has faced similar crises approximately every 70 to 80 years. Usually they can be resolved by the living. This time, the opposition is stronger." "Opposition?" I asked. "Entities that feed on chaos and fear," Cardinal Salvati explained. "They probe constantly for weaknesses in the barriers that separate dimensions. When they find them, they push through, seeking to establish permanent footholds in our reality." We reached sub-level 7 to find the other 6 cardinals already waiting for us. They stood in a semicircle around an ornate door made of some black metal I couldn't identify, covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. "Brothers," Cardinal Torriani greeted them. "The Guardians have provided escort. We may proceed." Cardinal Martelli, who I recognized from historical photographs, approached the door and placed his hand on a specific symbol. The metal began to glow with a soft red light, and we heard the sound of ancient mechanisms engaging. "Guardians," Cardinal Giovannetti addressed us, "what you are about to see must never be spoken of to anyone without direct papal authorization. Do you understand?" We nodded, though I wasn't sure we had much choice in the matter. The door swung open silently, revealing a chamber that defied physics. The room appeared to be much larger inside than the space should have allowed, stretching away into shadows that our flashlights couldn't penetrate. The walls were lined with shelves containing books, scrolls, and objects that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "The sealed archive," Cardinal Farnese announced, "repository of knowledge too dangerous for the general world, but essential for protecting it." The cardinals moved through the archive with obvious familiarity, locating specific texts and artifacts with practiced efficiency. As they worked, Cardinal Torriani explained our situation. Every 70 to 80 years, the spiritual barriers that protect our reality from intrusion grow thin. Usually, this results in minor incidents that can be contained locally. This cycle, however, several factors have aligned to create a perfect storm. "What factors?" Marco asked. "Global spiritual decline has weakened the collective faith that reinforces the barriers," Cardinal Braschi replied while examining an ancient tome. "Simultaneously, technological advancement has created new forms of electromagnetic interference that disrupt protective rituals." Cardinal Altieri added, "Most significantly, an artifact of immense power was recently moved from its protective location, creating a resonance effect that accelerated the barrier degradation." "What artifact?" I asked. The cardinals exchanged glances. Finally, Cardinal Torriani spoke. "The Crown of Shadows, a relic dating to the time of Christ, imbued with power over the boundaries between life and death. It was stolen from Vatican vaults 6 months ago." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Someone had deliberately stolen an artifact, knowing it would weaken the barriers protecting reality. This wasn't an accident or natural cycle. It was sabotage. "Who took it?" Marco demanded. "A faction within the church itself," Cardinal Sarasi admitted reluctantly. "Individuals who believe humanity should be exposed to these supernatural forces rather than protected from them. They call themselves the Revelation Society." As if summoned by his words, we heard footsteps echoing from the corridor outside the archive. Flashlight beams began dancing across the chamber entrance, and voices carried through the ancient air. "They have found us," Cardinal Salvati observed calmly. "Brothers, we must complete the ritual quickly." The 9 cardinals arranged themselves in a circle around a raised dais in the center of the chamber. Cardinal Torriani placed a silver chalice on the dais, while Cardinal Benedetti opened a book bound in what looked suspiciously like human skin. "Guardians," Cardinal Martelli called to us, "you must decide now. Will you help us maintain the barriers, or will you stand aside and let the Revelation Society proceed with their plan?" "What exactly is their plan?" I asked. "To use the crown of shadows to permanently tear down the barriers," Cardinal Giovannetti explained. "They believe this will usher in a new age of enlightenment where humanity gains access to supernatural knowledge and power." "And what do you believe will happen?" Marco asked. "Chaos," Cardinal Farnese replied simply. "Invasion by entities that view humans as either food or toys. The complete collapse of stable reality within 6 months." The footsteps were getting closer. I could hear voices now, speaking in urgent tones about sealing exits and preventing escape. "What do you need us to do?" I asked, making the decision for all three of us. Cardinal Torriani smiled, the first genuinely human expression I'd seen from any of them. "Guard the door. Prevent interruption for exactly 13 minutes. After that, the ritual will be complete and the immediate crisis resolved." "What about the crown of shadows?" "The ritual will neutralize its power permanently," Cardinal Braschi explained. "The artifact will become merely decorative." Marco, Luca, and I positioned ourselves at the archive entrance while the cardinals began their ritual. The language they spoke was definitely not Latin. Older, more primal, words that seemed to resonate in my bones. The first members of the Revelation Society appeared at the end of the corridor exactly 3 minutes later. 5 figures in dark robes, moving with military precision and carrying weapons that definitely weren't standard Vatican security equipment. "Stand down, Guardians," their leader called out. "You're interfering with official church business." "I doubt that," Marco replied. "Father Castellano authorized our presence here." "Castellano is no longer in command. This operation has been elevated to the highest levels." The dark-robed figures advanced steadily, and I got a better look at their equipment. The weapons appeared to be some kind of advanced energy projectors, and their robes were covered with symbols that made my eyes water when I looked at them directly. Behind us, the cardinals' chanting grew louder and more urgent. I could feel power building in the air, making my skin tingle with static electricity. "Last warning," the Revelation Society leader announced. "Move aside or face the consequences." "Giuseppe," Marco whispered, "whatever happens, we hold for 13 minutes, no matter what." The first energy blast hit the stone wall beside my head, leaving a perfectly round hole that glowed with residual heat. The Revelation Society wasn't planning to take prisoners. What followed was the most surreal firefight of my life. We used the ancient stone columns for cover while energy blasts sparked and crackled around us. The Revelation Society advanced methodically, but the narrow corridor limited their advantage in numbers and firepower. Behind us, the ritual continued unabated. The chanting had taken on an otherworldly quality, harmonizing with vibrations that seemed to come from the earth itself. The air in the archive began to shimmer like heat mirages. 6 minutes remaining, Cardinal Torriani called out without breaking his rhythm. One of the Revelation Society members produced a device that looked like a cross between a radio and a telescope. When they activated it, the temperature in the corridor dropped 20 degrees in seconds, and frost began forming on the walls. "Temporal displacement field," Marco shouted over the sound of cracking stone. "They're trying to slow down time around the ritual." The effect was immediately apparent. The cardinals' chanting became sluggish and distorted, while their movements took on a dreamlike quality. If the field continued, 13 minutes could stretch to hours or days. "We have to destroy that device," I yelled to Luca. "How? I'm a tomb guardian, not a commando." A new voice cut through the chaos. Cardinal Salvati, speaking in that ancient language, but directing his words toward the Revelation Society. Whatever he said made their leader stagger backward as if physically struck. "The dead should not interfere with the work of the living," the leader shouted in response. "The living should not endanger the existence of the living," Cardinal Benedetti replied, never pausing in his ritual participation. The temporal field flickered and died as its operator fell unconscious. The ritual pace resumed normal speed, but now we could hear new sounds from deeper in the corridor system. More footsteps, more voices, reinforcements arriving. 3 minutes remaining, Cardinal Torriani announced. The Revelation Society leader produced a final weapon, a dagger that seemed to absorb light, creating a zone of absolute darkness around its blade. When they raised it, every electronic device in the area began malfunctioning. The Shadow Blade, Cardinal Sarasi identified grimly. It can cut through spiritual barriers directly. Not if I can help it, Marco muttered, and before any of us could stop him, he charged. The collision between Marco and the Revelation Society leader sent them both tumbling to the ground. The Shadow Blade went skittering across the stone floor, its darkness flickering like a dying flame. 1 minute remaining, Cardinal Torriani called out. The remaining Revelation Society members made a desperate final assault, but their energy weapons were running low on power and their coordination was breaking down. Luca and I managed to hold the entrance using tactics that had more to do with luck than skill. 30 seconds, Cardinal Giovannetti announced. The chanting reached a crescendo that made the entire chamber vibrate. Books fell from shelves, ancient artifacts rattled, and the air itself seemed to thicken into something almost solid. 10 seconds, Cardinal Farnese called out. The Revelation Society leader broke free from Marco's grasp and lunged for the Shadow Blade, fingers closing around its handle just as the ritual reached completion. The explosion of light and sound that followed knocked everyone to the ground. When my vision cleared, the archive chamber had transformed completely. The oppressive atmosphere was gone, replaced by something that felt clean and bright despite the ancient surroundings. The 9 cardinals stood in their circle, but they were already beginning to fade around the edges like old photographs left in sunlight. It is finished, Cardinal Torriani announced. The barriers are restored. The crown of shadows is neutralized. The immediate crisis has passed. What happens now? I asked. Now we return to our rest, Cardinal Benedetti replied. Our service is complete. And them? Luca gestured toward the Revelation Society members who were struggling to their feet. They will face church justice, Cardinal Salvati said. The Shadow Blade is destroyed. Their other artifacts will be secured. The Revelation Society's power is broken. One by one, the cardinals began to disappear, their forms becoming transparent and then dissolving entirely. Cardinal Torriani was the last to fade. Guardian Toretti, he said, his voice now coming from a great distance, continue to serve faithfully. The Church will always need protectors who understand that some knowledge is too dangerous for general access. Will this happen again? I asked. Not for many years, he replied. But when it does, others will stand ready. The cycle continues as it must. And then they were gone, leaving only the 3 of us, 5 unconscious Revelation Society members, and an archive that felt somehow smaller and more ordinary than before. Father Castellano arrived 20 minutes later with a full security team and several church officials I didn't recognize. The Revelation Society members were taken into custody, the archive was resealed, and we were debriefed extensively before being sworn to absolute secrecy. This never happened, the chief Vatican security officer informed us. You were conducting routine maintenance patrols. You encountered nothing unusual. Is that clear? We nodded, understanding that some secrets were too important to share. In the months that followed, my work in the catacombs returned to normal. No more code black alerts, no more walking cardinals, no more world-threatening crises. Just the familiar routine of guarding the dead and maintaining the sacred spaces below Vatican City. But sometimes, during the quiet hours of night patrol, I think I hear whispers in the darkness. Conversations in ancient languages, footsteps that don't quite match any living person's gait, the soft rustle of robes that shouldn't exist. The Church has always been more than a religious institution, Cardinal Torriani had said. It has been humanity's shield against forces that would unmake reality itself. Now, I understand what he meant, The Vatican isn't just a center of faith, it's a fortress. And we tomb guardians aren't just security personnel. We're sentinels, standing watch against threats that most people couldn't imagine. The dead cardinals return to their rest, but their message remains clear. When the need is great enough, service to the Church continues beyond death. The barriers between worlds may grow thin again someday, but when they do, protectors will be ready. Until then, I keep walking my patrol routes through the ancient corridors, past the tombs of saints and sinners, cardinals and commoners, all resting peacefully in the darkness below. They sleep the sleep of the truly dead, and I make sure they stay that way. Because sometimes, the most important job in the world is making sure that the dead remain dead, and the living remain ignorant of just how thin the barriers between worlds really are. My name is Giuseppe Toretti, and I guard the dead. It's stranger work than you might imagine, but somebody has to do it. The Church is always watching, always ready, always protecting humanity from truths too dangerous to know. And in the deepest levels of the Vatican, where the oldest secrets sleep in chambers sealed by papal decree, 9 empty tombs stand ready for their occupants' return. Just in case. Emergency over, crisis resolved, barriers restored. Until next time.